Hello, viewers. I'm glad you're here. What is your attitude towards brewing? How should you think of the microbes that are doing the fermentation? Are you controlling them? Are you cooperating with them? Today, let's talk about some practical and fruitful ways to think about fermenting rustic Asian rice wine. And that's what I do here on this channel. I brew rustic Asian rice wine. Let's go over the microbes that are involved in this process. There are molds, there's yeast, and there's lactic acid bacteria. So there are three categories of microbes that are involved in brewing rice wine. First of all, there are molds that are used in making the fermentation starter, such as Nuruk. So these molds excrete enzymes, and among other things, these enzymes break down starch into sugar. So that's their purpose. That's why they're part of making Nuruk and part of the brewing process. That's the first process, which could take place long before you do the other steps of brewing. So you could make Nuruk and keep it for a year before using it to brew rice wine. So that's the mold. And the next crucial microbe is yeast. And yeast produces alcohol from sugar. So, of course, that's an essential part of this process. And brewing rice wine, the process is that of simultaneous saccharification and fermentation. So that means the enzymes are producing sugar from starch continuously, and at the same time, that sugar is being turned into alcohol by the yeast. So both of these processes are happening at the same time. So there's more than one kind of yeast that produces alcohol from sugar, just like there's several kinds of mold. But the important thing is that the yeast produces alcohol. That's what we want as the human brewers. We want the alcohol. And then the third kind of microbe I mentioned was lactic acid bacteria. These bacteria produce a more acidic environment, which helps protect the brew from invading microbes or unwanted mold. So the lactic acid bacteria help protect the brew. So that's how microbes are involved in the process of brewing and fermentation. So these microbes, they're doing all the work. And they contribute to the flavor of the brew in the end. And a recipe for rice wine involves setting up the right environment, the right conditions, so that these microbes thrive and do what they're supposed to. And of course, a recipe can involve making adjustments over time to that environment, or multiple stages of brewing. So this gets to my original question. What is the nature of brewing and fermentation in general? Are we exploiting these microbes, or are we cooperating with them? So I want to contrast these two mindsets. Do we want to control these microbes? By controlling, I mean, are we forcing them to do exactly what we want? Or are we cooperating with them by maybe setting the right environment, manipulating them, and indirectly getting what we want that way? First of all, I want to point out that microbes already cooperate with each other. For example, yeast and lactic acid bacteria, they both perform activities that benefit each other. So they're already cooperating, and a human is just another participant in that environment. And also, it's meaningful to note that microbes have different forms that activate in different conditions. So microbes are able to effectively communicate with each other, and they cooperate with each other. This kind of game theory of microbes even. So microbes end up behaving in ways that benefit themselves in cooperative ways, though. It also benefits other microbes. So that's the system is more complicated than it might seem at first glance, since whole colonies of different kinds of microbes are involved that might be in different forms, and they are able to communicate with each other and perform relatively complex behaviors because of this. So a human participant in this yeast and lactic acid bacteria ecosystem, a human participant is also able to cooperate and encourage the yeast that best produces alcohol, and in return, the yeast and lactic acid bacteria is propagated. So that's obviously a cooperative situation there. Now, thinking back to the mold, now mold does not need humans to survive. This kind of mold that works on a starch that can digest starch. This kind of mold is ubiquitous already. It has plenty of food throughout the world. The spores are present in the air everywhere. It doesn't need our help to survive. It just needs some food, but we can provide the right environment and give it some food, and that's the process of making Nuruk or other fermentation starters. We're giving the mold what it wants, and in return we get the enzymes. If we had the mentality that we need to control everything, well, that would force us to work in a sterile environment, and that would be impossible to recreate in a kitchen. There's just too many spores floating around in the air. All these microbes just exist in our kitchen, and we're not going to be able to have that sterile environment in our kitchen in any form or even any part. Even if we try, we're going to fail in that attempt at control. So instead, the cooperative viewpoint is that we set up the right environment for the microbes that we want, and they're just going to grow naturally. This is a more stable system, and it can be self-correcting. It's more stable because a diversity of microbes is competing and cooperating with each other in this environment. It's a more balanced system, and it's more resilient to shocks and contamination. So if you had a sterile environment with only one or two kinds of microbes, well, that's an unstable environment. That's delicate and easily contaminated. And ironically, it ends up being more difficult to control the sterile environment compared with the unsterile natural environment with all kinds of microbes. That's easier to control than the sterile environment. Even without conscious attention, yeast has accomplished incredible feats. It's been propagated to all ends of the world by humans and carefully preserved and carefully grown, and because it produces things that humans want. So yeast has accomplished a lot. Despite being just a microbe, it's been very successful. So that's really my point, that the cooperation mindset is the fruitful and productive one. It's allowed humans to preserve their food, to increase the nutritional value of the food, and to produce alcohol from fermentation. So the traditional recipes for rice wine, like the kinds of recipes that I feature on this channel, these recipes go along with what these microbes already want to do. That makes these recipes robust. They can withstand some variation in ingredients and environment. Small changes won't ruin the recipe. You'll still end up with delicious rice wine. One thing you have to accept is that this cooperation might come at the cost of consistency. These microbes are doing the work, and you aren't controlling them rigorously, so there might be variations. But as long as you get delicious rice wine at the end, do you really mind? So that's my conclusion. We're cooperating with the microbes in fermentation, and it's a good thing. Keep that mindset, and it's going to help you in your brewing. So let me know what you think in the comments. What's your philosophy of brewing? I hope you're brewing something right now. I hope you're enjoying some fermented products. And as always, thank you for watching.